Welcome to the PRiSM Podcast. We tell the stories that Hollywood won't. I'm your host, Rodrigo Mariano. Hope you're doing well. Across from me on this wonderful Zoom call is director Neel Kumar, director of Beneath the Sea of Light, starring Academy Award nominee Barkhad Abdi, and Bollywood actor Jim Sarb. How are you doing today, Neel?
I am very well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How's COVID pandemic life treating you?
It's pretty cool. I'm trying to use the time. I say cool. There are a lot of people out there that are not having, they're really fighting on the front lines of this. But I think for people like us who make stuff, it's an interesting time because it kind of forces you to come to terms with all the work that you said that you would do one day.
No, exactly.
You kind of put off. So it's interesting because I'm not in a comfort zone at all. Even though I'm pretty happy to be kind of locked down. We're in Paris at the moment. I live here with my girlfriend, and Paris is under total lockdown.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the second one now. So it's going to be at least for the next couple of weeks, probably longer.
Yeah. Right now, LA County is in lockdown, but right now around the East Coast, we're just chilling right now. But the lockdown is imminent. Definitely by the end of the month, as the aftermath of Thanksgiving and the start of the holidays, there's definitely going to be more stuff going down, and I hope it gets better soon, but who knows. But of course, thank you for coming on. Thank you for spending your time with us. It means a lot to us over at PRiSM. And since the audience doesn't know too much about the film, I'm just going to say the synopsis that I found on Showtime really quick. A Somali billboard repairman working in Dubai decides he wants to experience some of products advertised on his billboards. It's an experience that begins innocently enough, but quickly spins out of control, especially when a con man enters the picture.
I look like $1,000,000 wearing this suit.
You know these things on our billboards? It's easy to get caught up in them.
Barkhad, are you back to your dreamland, eh?
One day I'm gonna wear that watch. Sir, I wanna work in sales. I can do it. I work hard. I'm a people person.
You haven't even finished school. Nobody in the city will offer you a better job if you haven't finished school.
So this is all I'm worth.
You're worth more than that, aren't you?
Apparently not.
The only way you'll get any of that stuff is if you steal it.
I'm not a thief.
No. But you are a dreamer. All good thieves are dreamers. If you don't know how to take care of what you have, then you don't deserve it.
One more for the list. What's left?
It's gonna chase me. How fast are you willing to run for 40,000 dirhams?
You can take whatever you want. You can do whatever you want.
Look what that got me.
Ready?
I'm not gonna hurt him.
Being poor isn't up to you, man. Staying poor is a choice.
So, anything you want to say to build on that for the people unfamiliar with the film?
I don't know really. It's such a weird story. No, I think that sums it up. I think their pitch was better than my pitch. Yeah, I had the first half of that. So people ask me what's the movie about, and in a sentence I say a Somali billboard repairman in Dubai who tries to experience the products on his billboards meets a con artist who takes him under his wing. And I think Showtime did a pretty cool job of expanding on that. So I'm quite happy about that. But yeah, it's a weird story. It's a weird setting. They're weird characters. And when I say weird, it's not what I'm used to seeing, on a film in Hollywood or these aren't characters that I'm used to seeing. So I'm quite proud of that, and then I'm quite scared at the same time, because does that mean that maybe we should have done something different?
No, that's perfect, because film, from what I perceive, is just a great place to vocalize the voices that haven't been told their stories yet. And a Somali billboard repairman working in Dubai perfectly sums up a story that has not been told yet. So congratulations on
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
to tell his story, or a story similar to that one. Before we get into talking about the film, I'm just curious, what have you been watching? What have you been listening to during the pandemic? And yeah.
That's a really good question. Geez. Okay, movies. What have I been watching? I posted, like, I had a post on Reddit about the movie, and a couple of people mentioned the Safdie brothers. And I'd seen Uncut Gems, which I enjoyed, but I hadn't seen a movie called Good Time. And Barkhad's actually in the film. So I watched, the last movie I saw was 2 days ago, which was Good Time. And that was a lot of fun. It's really frantic, very well done. It's pretty cool. So yeah, that's the last film I saw. And musically, like, what do I listen to? I think my favorite artists are Ryan Adams and Gregory Alan Isakov. So they're on repeat. Plus a Canadian guy called Kenny Yates. He's, I think, not super famous or anything yet, but amazing singer-songwriter. And it's perfect lockdown music, like the three of them, along with The National. That's like my soundtrack of 2020, I think.
You're a musician too, right?
Yes. How did you find that out?
It was just on your Instagram. You posted the singles, and while I was doing research, I couldn't help but.
Oh yeah. I'm working on I'm using lockdown as well too. I'm writing a screenplay for the new film, and I'm working on a record quietly.
Perfect.
But yeah. I mean, the music's I release it, but it's mostly just for me. It's no pressure on the music,
Of course.
But it's a great outlet that I don't have to worry about. I can just do whatever I feel like.
Yeah, but the Uncut Gems and Good Time are great movies. Yeah. Uncut Gems was actually filmed like right next door to me. I live right next to the casino at the third act, which is pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
I love Good Time too. Wow, the Safdie brothers are just like really, really stressful filmmakers. That's it. Like, their films are very fast.
Very anxiety-inducing.
Going on. Like, they talk over each other all the time. It's just like overwhelming.
And look, I've seen two, so I can't speak for their. I think they have they had another film out in 2014. I don't know if it's just the three or there are more, but the characters they deal with, they're dark, they're flawed, they're dark, they're very real, and I love that. I love flawed characters. I love people that aren't doing all the right things and saying all the right things at the right time. I'm really interested in people like that. So yeah, it's even though the stories that I would tell would be very different, I think the fact that they have this inherent darkness to them, and when I say darkness, I just mean like a reality to them, I find really, really interesting. So I find the characters interesting as well, not just the filmmaking style, Since you're bringing up character, I'm just curious, because I have this debate with a lot of friends that I have at Emerson. Where would you put character in like the priority list of how to approach storytelling? Because personally, character is paramount to literally everything else to me. Yeah, it's first. For me, it's first as well. Okay. It's cool to hear you say that, because, I say that to people who ask, or we talk about this stuff, and, they ask me, like, what's the most important thing about writing? And like, for me, the toughest part of filmmaking is the writing part. And the toughest part of writing is the character, and you got to get the character right. It's not really about the words. I tell people a lot that writing's not about words, and they look at me like, huh? And yeah, really. And these are for the kind of stories that I would like to continue telling. The movie starts and ends with the character, because the character has an arc, and they either learn something or they fail to learn something, right? Mm-hmm. And if they don't learn something or fail to learn something through the story, then the audience doesn't pick up anything from the story, and then you're really wasting people's time. So, a lot of people say, okay, not every film has to have that, like action movies. right? But the best superhero movies, in my opinion, I'm not a huge fan of superhero movies, but the best ones for me were the ones where it's full of action, but you've got a very clear character arc, or your character, like Christopher Nolan's Batman series, I think are definitely my favorite superhero films. I mean, I could go down this rabbit hole for hours, but to answer the question, in a nutshell, I think character is absolutely the most important thing. Character is what writing is all about, and so I would put it, as you said, right at the top. And ironically, I was having this conversation with my my cinematographer, my partner as well. Like, we run the production company together, and we worked together for 10 years. And for him, as a cinematographer, the most important thing for him is character. And we've been learning about writing and how to write or how not to write together, for the last 10 years. And for him, if he doesn't know what his character is doing in a scene, he doesn't know how to light it. And I think that tells you everything you need to know.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really cool way to approach cinematography, because there are so many directors and DOPs that are amazing at commercials and making something look good, or music videos, making something look good. I'm really bad at that. I'm not a visual director. I'm more of a story director. And, if I was working with another cinematographer, I would really want to work with someone who understands character. Like, I think Vittorio Storaro, when he wrote a book, he called it Writing with Light, and that also tells you everything you need to know. I think character is really the most important part of cinema. For the kind of movies that I want to, make.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's so interesting because I feel like a lot of people don't pick up on that. And also, like, going back to the studios making giant franchise movies, the best ones and the ones that make the most amount of money is the ones with characters that you could relate to, because the audience could attach to those. If you don't achieve that, then how do you expect to make sequels? This is why so many things bomb out of the game.
Because you don't care after.
Exactly.
Why am I watching? Even Joker. I mean, Joker's not a happy movie, but it was amazing because that character was intriguing, and was real, right? It felt real. It felt like a lot of mental health issues that we're ignoring today were being ignored in that story, or in the era that story was set in. And look what happened. So it's a very interesting take on. I don't know. I just find it's all the movies I've ever loved had good characters, and it's not a coincidence. Like, my favorite movie of all time is Heat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, by Michael
Mann.
Yeah, and it's the film that made me want to make films, and it's all about characters. It's a cops and robbers movie, but it's all about characters.
It's so rich.
Yeah, and even what you would call dismissively, the background cast. Every single person in that film is there for a reason. Every single character is there for a reason, and they have their own worlds. You could make a movie on every single person in that movie, and it's a good film is the writers know why their characters are there and exactly what their characters are experiencing at any point. So that's something I'm trying to learn as I go along.
Yeah. And definitely with more experience, you'll pick up on more stuff for sure.
Yeah.
I need to rewatch Heat. I haven't watched Heat since I was 10 or something.
Yeah.
I just remember it being guns and masks and Al Pacino.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The famous coffee shop scene. I mean, it came out when I was 10. So yeah, a while ago now. But I don't think. I mean, it's got some of the best action scenes in history. Like Grand Theft Auto 4, when they made a bank robbery heist in the game, they based it off Heat. I mean, you watch The Town, right? Ben Affleck, another fantastic movie.
Boston movie, big Boston movie.
Exactly. And he based that, not based it, but it's his favorite film as well, and it was a huge inspiration. In fact, one of the characters is watching Heat in the background in the movie as he walks in, and I think it's such an important film, and I think that maybe behind the scenes important because it's inspired a lot of people that are making films today, and of course, there's that iconic coffee shop scene with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and what it does really well. the last thing I'll say about Heat, because I can, again, go on forever, is that it builds up these two characters, Pacino and De Niro, and they never meet. They meet like halfway through the film.
Yeah.
And you think back, how much screen time do they actually share together? Not that much.
Barely any. Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah. And then suddenly when you've got these two guys facing off over a cup of coffee, and it's more tense than any action scene you could imagine.
Exactly.
It's more tense than a gunfight to me at the end. So, yeah. Anyway, again, that movie's all about character. Even though the action scenes are brilliant, and they train the military with the bank robbery scene when these guys are retreating under fire. The Marines use those sequences from Heat to train recruits on how to retreat under fire. It's the authenticity is there, but it lives and dies with the characters. So
yeah, totally. Wow, you could really talk about Heat all day. That's great.
Yeah, there's a bunch of movies I could talk about all day. I really shouldn't.
Well, come on next time and we'll talk about all the movies and whatever. Of course.
Sure, I'd love to.
So of course, your movie is now getting distribution from Showtime. How does that feel as like a first-time filmmaker? This is everything happening all at once, basically.
Yeah. So I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't know if it's what you want to hear, but I'll tell you.
I want to hear it.
Honestly. Yeah. Okay. I don't know how it feels because it doesn't feel real to me yet. And I think the reason for that is, I've said before, like, I don't think this movie should have been made. Meaning, there were so many things in the way. Just logistically, in terms of expectations, nobody expected an Oscar nominee to be interested in, a film coming out of Dubai about a billboard repairman, and nobody expected a Dubai movie to be about a billboard repairman. That's not what you think of when you think Dubai.
Exactly.
And even when it went to investors, like I went to 72 investors, and 70 said no. So like we've been and from that initial starting point of going out with the screenplay and trying to pitch the film to people to today, there have been so many hurdles. Because I produced the film as well with my with Umran, who's my DP production partner, and from it's taken a long time, and so it hasn't sunk in. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool. I see it on the Showtime page, and like, yeah, I did hit refresh a few times to make sure it wasn't me. It's the digital version of pinching yourself. And it's not real yet, it hasn't sunk in yet. And I think that like part of the reason why is because I'm detached, I'm locked down here in Paris, and okay, I know it's on the internet and my attorneys are talking to me about it, as they're going through contracts, or our sales agent Shoreline is going back and forth with us and saying, yeah, awesome, we're all good to go. But it hasn't sunk in. The reality hasn't sunk in yet. It's like I don't know how to explain it. It's like you've been sprinting, and then you stop all of a sudden, and your body feels like you're still running. So I feel like I'm still running with this film, because we have been for like 4 years now.
When do you think it's going to stop?
Or
will it just never stop?
Maybe when we start the next one, when the next one, we start that process of going to investors and actors, the fun part. And pitching it to people. So
yeah, it must feel so surreal. That's literally like the dream.
Yes, surreal is the word. Surreal is the word. I think. Yeah. Yeah,
I can't imagine that. I hope it does happen to me, but I can't imagine when it does.
I hope bigger things happen to you. But I think when you do, it really depends on your level of involvement. I know directors that they don't have the level of involvement in their films that I have. In some ways, as a director, they have more involvement because they're not the producer, they're not the writer. They can be the director more. But for me, my main role wasn't really director, and it wasn't writer, it wasn't producer, it wasn't a technical role. It was really like, get it out there, whatever it is, good movie, bad movie, good script, bad script, make a film, tell this guy's story. And that, I don't know, it's more like custodian, it's not a proper title. But that job was just like, make sure this thing exists. And for that, the day it goes up on Showtime, and I'll try to use a friend's account because I'm not based in one. I'll try to use a friend's account to just get a preview of it. When it goes up, then I think then it'll be real. When I'm watching it and it's not on my laptop or it's not on one of my hard drives or something, when I'm watching it on an independent platform, then I think then I'll go like. But right now I'm holding my breath because so many things. That's a bad thing to say, but everything that could have gone wrong on this film went wrong. And that was film school for me. I never went to film school, and that taught me a lot. But at the same time, you're perpetually holding your breath. So when things go wrong now, I don't freak out anymore because I'm like, it's okay. It's worth it. I'm like, it'll work out. Sorry. And when things go right, I don't get overly ecstatic anymore because I'm like, wait for the ... because there's very often a ... And not to be pessimistic, but I'm an optimistic person by nature, and I've had to rein in my optimism, because you're cheering, and then all of a sudden someone's like, oh, but fill in the blank, and then now you have this new problem, and you're like, oh. So I think once it's out there and I'm watching it on Showtime or wherever else it's gonna go, then it'll be cool. It'll be cool to fire up Netflix with my girlfriend and see a movie I made up there. It'll be awesome. God. It's a good feeling, I'm sure. So neither can I yet, but I'll let you know honestly.
Yeah, please update me on that. I would very much like to know the rest of the process of you just absorbing everything that's going on with you. No, I was just gonna ask, like, what was the hardest aspect of the film to figure out? Clearly there are a lot of problems when you were shooting.
I don't know how to answer correctly. I don't know what correct is. I think the hardest thing, honestly, is seeing it through. It's the perseverance. There are way more talented directors than me, and I think that'll be evidenced when you watch the movie. I'm sure there's loads
Don't downplay yourself, dude.
No, but genuinely, like, it's hard to look. People like you and me go and watch a Christopher Nolan movie, right? Mm-hmm. And we come out of the theater and we're like, hey, we're competing with that guy. When you make a film and it goes out in theaters, Christopher Nolan's probably still going to be making films. So people are going to walk into a theater and go, or, fire up Netflix and see your movie poster and his movie poster, right? It's like, and I try to explain this to people, like, it's just people like you and me, the audacity that we have of just trying to do what we do and make films and tell stories is like, it's so arrogant in a way. Like, who do you think you are to compete with somebody like that? And I love that.
God.
Yeah. And so I'm not trying to downplay myself, but I'm looking at, like, I don't make excuses for myself. I don't go, oh, this is a good first movie or this is a good first screenplay. I compare it to, like, hey, what's my favorite movie? Heat. How does it do that? Nothing I ever make will, live up to, like, movies like Heat or Warrior or Nightcrawler, The Usual Suspects. These are some of the movies that really influenced me growing up. But at the same time, I think that what I do have going for me, it's not the talent as a writer or director or editor or whatever, producer. I think I don't know how to give up. And I didn't know that until I made a film. It's the perseverance. I think there were a lot of people, if I can be really blunt, in my shoes who would have really abandoned the project from a very early stage. We got a lot of no's, and we're still. I can't legally tell you how, unfortunately, but we're still getting no's. Imagine, like, we're up on Showtime in a few days, and we're still getting no's on this movie for certain things. And it's like, it doesn't faze me anymore. I think the main thing that you have to have as an independent filmmaker, if you come up in a system where you've got a studio and someone's like a producer's, found you and they're giving you a script that they want you to make, they believe in you as a director, completely different. My experiences don't apply to people like that. But if you're making a film independently, with by yourself or with a couple of close friends, perseverance is the most important thing. It trumps talent, honestly, because I know a lot of directors more talented than me that would have thrown in the towel and said, I'm not touching this film, for whatever reason. Oh, the investor pulled out, I'm not touching this movie. You had this incident, I'm not touching this movie. You want to make a $3 million movie for like, a fraction of that? I'm sorry, I can't do it. So yeah, I think perseverance was the most important thing, and that's, in a sense, I was talking to my dad the other day because he asked me, he's like, "How do you feel?" And I'm like, "Same thing I told you. It hasn't sunk in, And he said something to me. He's like, you kept telling me that on shoot you didn't have time, or before the shoot even, you didn't have time to think about the craft of it. You didn't have time to think about how am I going to shoot this scene. I genuinely, because we were scrambling all the way to the shoot and putting out fires one after the other. While I was on set, while I'm directing actors, I'm putting out a fire, on the left between takes. And I didn't have the ability to think about anything. So my dad brought up an interesting point. And he said, basically, everything that you've done in this movie is instinctive. And sure, you may find that, you could have done this better, or next time you do something differently, but this is where your instincts are. And if this is just your instincts and not, with a complete lack of education, this is just your instincts, that's pretty good. And I was like, hey, that's not just a parent saying, oh, my son made a movie, that's cool. That's somebody really thinking this through, looking at the experiences that I had. And so what this did was it kind of told me that, okay, I have the perseverance to make another film, for sure, because like I can't picture myself doing anything else, as hard as this was to get out there. So if I have the perseverance, and if my instincts are represented by, what Beneath the Sea of Lights is, then I'm not in that bad a place. The one question that I didn't have answered when I was making Beneath the Sea of Lights, and if someone could have answered that for me, it would have made my life a lot easier, was, can Neel make a movie, right? Because when you're making your first film, you have no idea if you can finish it. So many first films you made. And I understand now the reason why, in Hollywood, there's a reluctance to work with a director who's never made a movie before. It's not about talent. It's not about ability. It's like, hey, this is going to take the life out of you, right? And what are you gonna do? Are you gonna break down on set like a diva because you didn't get 6 white horses in the scene, or you didn't get your crane shot, or when you wanted it, or you didn't have a great experience with one of your actors? How are you gonna manage it? Can you close a film, right? It's basically, can you finish a marathon? And I don't care how you place. You can place dead last, right? But can you finish the race? And at least that question I answered, that yeah, I can close. So I know I have the perseverance. I don't have the talent that I want. I don't have the innate talent, and I don't have the abilities that I would like to have. But I think, I'd love to learn that in the process. But I wouldn't trade the talent or the ability for the perseverance, because if I did that, if I were a more talented filmmaker but I didn't have the perseverance, the movie wouldn't have been finished 100%. So I think it's not an answer I would have given you a year ago. I would have said, direction is important, or writing is important, or whatever. But, if you were trying to get something made, seeing it through is the most important thing, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. You don't know if you could even, and a lot of people have trouble starting making their films in the first place. They have trouble putting their thought to the pen onto the paper. And they have trouble, exactly what you said, closing and even trying to overcome that humongous process in the first place, which is why drive is super, super important, and perseverance is
absolutely
super important. And the thing is, people like us, we won't take no for an answer either. We just want to prove to ourselves that we can do what we want to do, no matter how much innate talent that we think we have. Yeah. Because personally, we'll get better with more experience, obviously. Well, you have to start somewhere, 100%. So when you started doing filmmaking, when you became set on, I want to do filmmaking as a career, how did you get to the point where you were like, yeah, I'm ready to make a feature film, instead of just doing shorts over and over, or doing commercials for hire?
I still don't think I'm ready to make a feature film, but so what I mean by that is there was never a point where I said I'm ready. But I'll try to briefly give you a quick rundown of how I got into this stuff. I used to work in advertising, and I was a writer at an ad agency, a couple of agencies, and this was around 2009, 2010. Canon released the 5D Mark II, and I was dabbling in photography for fun. And I saw this camera that could take great pictures, and then it could shoot video, and I suddenly became interested in the video and in the video aspect of things. And so, I would have like parties at my place where I would grab the camera and I would just film people, so like we'd have like a pirate party, right? So you got a bunch of drunken pirates, and I remember I just walked around in my 5D shooting people, and I took the track shipping up to Boston, and I cut to that track, and I didn't know really how to edit. I kind of taught myself as I went along. That's how I basically got into filmmaking. It was kind of embarrassing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's probably a story I shouldn't tell. But that evolved into then, I would carry my camera to the agency, and the agency would do like spec films, for their clients, just to pitch like, oh, this is how the angle would be, or this is how the idea would work. And so I started shooting them for the agency. And then, I learned as I was going, and then suddenly those spec films became very real, and they started going out. And then my agency started charging for them. And I was like, wait a minute, I should start charging for them. So the reason I'm telling you all this is the decision, I think, for me to leave the security of a job and set up a film production company. Before I called myself a director or anything, I went to my uncle. It was the only other person I know that doesn't work for someone. He runs his own. And I was like, am I ready? Right? Like, I don't feel like I'm ready. I was 24. I didn't know anything about anything. And I wasn't trained. I didn't study film. But I had this thing of, I want to go tell stories. And my uncle was like, hey, jump and learn to fly while you're falling. And I was like, that's really, really good advice. Because there's, for anything, writing your first screenplay, making your first movie, there's this whole thing of, am I ready? And I think a lot of that is fear. You may legitimately be asking yourself, but your subconscious might be like, yeah, you're not ready yet. When nobody's ever ready, say, like Richard Branson says, say yes to the job and then learn how to do it. And so I think that I kept putting things off, and I would hide behind the work. I would hide behind commercial work. I was making a living from films, like commercials and stuff. So I would have the excuse of, oh, I gotta make sure I eat next month. I can't be writing a screenplay. And the real fear was, I'm gonna write a crappy screenplay, so don't start. And so we eventually, we made a short, my partner and I, called Security, and I still don't get it. It's about two security guards and they're guarding an empty construction site in the Dubai desert. And one guard is Indian, one guard is Pakistani. And the Indian guy has never been out of India before. So it was really about an Indian and Pakistani guy meeting for the first time in Dubai, which they do, and they become friends. That's one of the things I love about Dubai is it very quickly reveals the falsehood of that India versus Pakistan narrative. That's kind of, the governments are against each other, the armies are against each other, but the people are like, we're the same,
Yeah.
And so I made that film, and it, it did well at festivals and stuff, but I still didn't feel I was ready. And I think I came across the story of the billboard repairman because I was driving down, one of the main highways in Dubai. I always go for a drive just to think about stuff. Mm-hmm. And I would see these guys hanging off billboards and, changing the bulbs behind the posters or changing the posters themselves. And I remember being in advertising, I kind of felt an ownership of the brands that I would work on and a curiosity. I was earning I don't know if I can talk numbers, but like my first agency, I was earning like $1,200, $1,300 a month. And I'm writing ads for like $300,000 cars, right? And I want to go to the showroom and see what that car's all about. I'm never going to be able to afford it in my life, right? But I still feel like that's my brand, right? Because I wrote the fine print on the copy on their ad. So I'm an ambassador, Or I felt some sort of sense of ownership. And my curiosity was, do these guys feel that? You know, these guys that come here from, or come to Dubai from India, Pakistan, Africa, you know, they make like $300, $400 a month. What do they feel when they put up an ad for a Ferrari? Are they curious? You know, do they go like, hey, I'm going to drive that car one day? You know, are there people like that? Or do they just ignore stuff and go, that's not for us? And that was the question I wanted to answer. I wanted to write a story about a guy who was curious about the stuff that he was putting up. And the minute I came up with that, that's when I felt I got to write this. And this is not a short film. It started as a short, and I was like, I'm wasting my time if this is a short, because I can't grasp this character in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So, sorry for the 10-minute answer to your, you know, one sentence question, but
No, it's all good.
I only felt I was ready when I really had something I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted to say yet, but I knew the landscape that I wanted to explore, the character landscape that I wanted to explore. And that's when I kind of hit go. And I was like, you know what, just write a draft. And it was so bad. It was, oh my God, it was 19 drafts ago. And
Jesus Christ.
And I heard those stories. Oh yeah, I wrote 21 drafts, I wrote 19 drafts. And I'm like, I'm not going to be one of those people. And oh my God, here we are now. And I'm like, yeah, that's definitely me. It was horrible. It was so bad because I didn't know anything, and I kind of had to learn as I went along. But the impetus was always from the story, you know, and I mean, you didn't really ask, but you mentioned that, you know, people say sometimes, I'm not ready yet to write the screenplay, or I think the minute, or what people call writer's block. I don't believe in writer's block, even though I felt like I faced it for many years. I think what people call writer's block is you're not yet 100% sure what you want to say, or what your story wants to say. And some people can say anything really well, you know, in terms of the way they write, or the way they shoot, or the way they direct. But as an audience, going back to what we were talking about with movies, with character, you know immediately when you're in the hands of a filmmaker that has something to say, or a screenwriter that has something to say, right? In the first 3 minutes of the movie, you're just like, basically what they're saying to you is, hey, trust me, I know what I'm doing, right? And it's like this, it's a very, very comforting sort of first 3 minutes watching an amazing movie. It's not just that it's awesome. It's that whoever made the film, the writers, the producers, the editors, everybody, they're all in control of their craft, because they're all working in one direction, because they all know what they want to say. You know, so yeah, I think that was the other thing. The minute I kind of knew what I wanted to say, even with the second film I'm working on, I got stuck on it for ages. But the minute I knew what I wanted to say, then suddenly, you know, everything starts coming out. So
yeah, no, I love what you said about earlier. What was it? Jeez. Oh yeah, you were saying something about once the idea came into your head with this billboard repairman and stuff, you were just like, stop thinking, let's do this thing, write it down,
just figure him out.
And that was the catalyst for creating your first feature. You weren't planning to make your first feature.
I wanted to. I always wanted to. It was
you always had the intention.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people in my position are like, I'm going to make a feature eventually, but they have no idea when they're going to do it, or they don't have like a set timeline. Well, personally, I'm like, I kind of want to make a feature before I'm 25. And you were talking about earlier, before we started this podcast, about how in Dubai, you don't even have this infrastructure of achievements and goals and check marks to do.
Yeah. Well, I think it's different now. Look, I was born in 86. And like, so I grew up in the 90s, right? And I grew up in the 90s in Dubai, and in Canada for a bit, but I used to watch a lot of movies. I used to enjoy watching movies a lot. I mean, it was my music and cinema. They're the two things that like really, it never even occurred to me that I could make a film, you know? People were like, what do you want to do? And when I was 9, my answer was I wanted to be an Egyptologist, okay? Egyptology made sense to me as a 9-year-old, right? That's a viable, you know, career path. But cinema somehow didn't. You know, films were like this world that I don't know, there's this mysticism.
Yeah.
And it still is. Like, growing up in the 90s in Dubai, we used to rent VHS tapes from a video rental store. And I would watch everything that Hollywood had to offer. That's how I got Heat and movies like Braveheart. And I'm really showing my age now. I would rent all these videos, and I just realized, that video rental store's closed now. But with Beneath the Sea of Lights, I've kind of, especially now that's going on Showtime, and it's in the US, more importantly, is that I'm kind of putting something back into that world. Okay, not to the scale of Heat yet, but I never thought growing up that I would be able to add to this world of, magic that you see on a TV screen or, at the cinema. So I was never a viable career path for me because, I don't know, it just seemed so out there, right? Like, it was probably more likely that I'd be a rock star than a film director. People didn't talk about it where I grew up. We didn't have filmmakers we didn't have filmmakers come to schools. Like, even now in Dubai, right before I made Beneath, I spoke at a couple of schools, and because they wanted film directors to come in. And these were like, one was a high school, one was an elementary school, and one was a primary school. It's like, man, I wish a film director came to me when I was 9 and said, hey, dude, you can make a movie, right? One day. But yeah, it wasn't the case for me. So I think that lost me a bunch of time in terms of like my career. My career could have started a lot earlier if I had known that this was a viable option, and maybe I would have gone to film school. But I wouldn't have learned all the stuff that I had learned the way that I did. The other places I grew up was Sri Lanka, and I spent like 6 years there. High school was there basically, and it had never occurred to me that cinema was even a viable option for people. I mean, it's a dream, right? Like to go, just to say like, I want to tell stories and make movies. I mean, even now, like if I go to parties, even before I made Beneath, if I go to parties, I don't tell people what I do. It's really arrogant to say, but people say, what do you do? And I say, I work in film production. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Because the minute you say I'm a film director, then they're like, oh, what do you do? And then I say, I'm making a movie. And they're like, oh, who's in the movie? I say, well, have you seen Captain Phillips? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, nobody, I mean, it's horrible, but nobody else gets a word in, So, and it's, I don't like that. I don't like being there's a reason why I'm behind the camera. I don't like being the center of attention. And it's not fair because, I mean, we're lucky to be doing this kind of stuff. I don't want to be the guy at dinner that at a dinner party or, going out for drinks or something that everyone talks to and then, nobody else gets a word in. So I feel like, is this real? Is this my job? Is this what I do? And yeah, it's an awesome feeling. Like, we're lucky. I mean, my worst day as a filmmaker beat my best day in advertising. And as far as jobs go, as far as 9-to-5 jobs go, advertising in the creative department is one of the best jobs you can have. It's great. You get to have fun for a living. But having said that, even my worst day in film is still, I don't know, you feel like, I don't know how to explain it. You feel like you're part of something bigger. And I'm very aware of the fact that, I play things down sometimes, or, I'm very vocal about the fact that I'm not, I don't think I'm the greatest filmmaker or writer or whatever. I'm very realistic about my capacity, I think. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I am aware of the fact that good movie, bad movie, whatever, I've made something that is going to outlive me. And it says something. And I think every single person that worked on the film, from me all the way down to, every single crew member, I saw the enthusiasm when we put the trailer out. Everyone felt like this is my movie. And I love that. And every single person, like, I got messages from my crew. They were like, hey, I don't want to sound morbid, but if I pop tomorrow, it's okay. Because I left something behind. I was like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's the magic of movies. It's such a collaborative effort, number one. And number two, obviously the magic, it's surreal. And also it outlives you in that sense. Yeah. I haven't thought about that in a while. Wow. It must be an insane feeling knowing that you already have like a legacy of sorts.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I hope I hope I get to add to it. I hope this isn't my only one. But the people that have impacted my life the most, right? Other than my best friend and, my direct family, like my parents, and, the people that have had the greatest impact on me are people I've never met, and like you have that scene in Good Will Hunting, where Robin Williams asks Matt Damon, right? Another great Boston movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have friends? He's like, yeah, and he's like Shakespeare, Nietzsche, and like he had, they're all dead. I some of the people that have influenced me the most, and I don't mean in cinema. They're people I've never met. They're musicians that unfortunately I'll never meet, and like there's that scene in Vanilla Sky where, okay, I don't want to say what's happening, but there's a sequence where his life flashes before his eyes, and it's just this supercut of all these pop culture references, and like from music videos, from like To Kill a Mockingbird with Gregory Peck, it's all these, and that's what fatherhood was to him, and his whole life is like this I don't know, montage of all the stuff that he's been exposed to, and I think we're all like that to a huge extent. So I know the impact that those people have had on me, and I'm in the baby steps, I guess, hopefully, of my filmmaking career. So there's no way this movie that I've made is going to have that kind of impact on somebody, but there's the potential for it. Somebody I never meet, who is never going to be able to tell me how this film impacted them, is going to be impacted by this film. And it's great, because I don't need the recognition, just the knowledge that someone's going to watch this movie, and I don't know, there might be somebody in a tough financial situation who goes, yeah, like Barkhad, his character always in the movie, looks at a $150,000 watch, and he says, one day I'm going to wear that watch. And I have people in my family that are like that. They grew up really, really rough, but they were like, one day I'm going to have that for my family. And sometimes it was something material, and sometimes it was something like, one day I'm going to have a stable job, right? So that I can support, and for them, that was an achievement. And I have people like that in my family that have inspired me. And so, someone might watch this one day and go like, yeah, one day I'm going to wear that watch, right? And they might start cutting out stuff, because he has a vision board. Mm-hmm. Sleeps in a bunk bed, the character, in a room he shares with 6 people, and he cuts out stuff from his billboards and he pastes them on the bottom of the upper bunk. So he goes to sleep like looking at all this stuff. And I genuinely know people like that. I can't name them, but I genuinely know people like that, and they got it. Oh, and how? I mean, I know people that they got everything they wanted and more. Like I can't even fathom how successful they are. And it came from that, because they used to cut out stuff and stick it on their wall and say, one day I'm gonna do that. And in a sense, there's a bit of a cautionary tale in the message of the film as well. Like, don't get wrapped up in that. But I'm very aware of the fact that whether it's good or not, it's totally subjective. But is it going to impact someone? There's a strong chance that it will. And suddenly now you're part of this whole mystical, magical world of cinema and Hollywood and the characters, all of these characters that we've grown up with. So that's, I'm more excited about that. When like people talk to me about like the success or something like that, whether it's, Showtime or getting onto a platform or financial or whatever, for me, it's more like I've left something behind, right? That's going to impact people in the same way that other people impacted me. That's the most important, thing. And it's like saying that I was here, I lived during this era. I grew up in these cities, in these situations, and this is what I saw. In my time, this is what I saw. This is my interpretation of what I saw, and I think that's what every artist tries to do in a sense, whether it's a musician or a painter, or songwriter, or a filmmaker. So,
yeah, 100%. No, that was a really great answer. I was just going to point out, like, it's very interesting how people who are exactly like Barkhad's character in the movie. It really speaks to not really just research, but the personal connection that you have with people who actually experience stuff like that in materialism. But I'm sure it's very much reflected in the film. So this is your first feature film, right? And right before this, you had your short, which Security, which did film festivals and all of that. Clearly a huge jump. So how did you secure funding for this movie? Did you already have the cast in tow when you started pitching it to people?
No, I didn't.
So how did you?
Things I
How
can't
did
say.
you sell it?
I can't say, but like I'll have to be a bit ambiguous about certain things.
Okay.
No, we didn't have the cast in tow, but we had to shift tack. So I was telling you earlier that, like, you know, there's this whole kind of, you've got to be kind of arrogant, you know, in a sense, to even think that, oh, I can make a movie, right? And in Dubai, I didn't think that we would get funding for an international film, and I didn't think there'd be interest from actors. So I set out, like, So
question: the film industry in Dubai is very, very, very small.
it's not small. So there's a huge commercial film industry, and there are feature films being made. As far as I'm aware, most of those features are pushed for the region. Like, a lot of them are Arabic.
Yeah.
And there are not many features made for the international market, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want to make a film for Dubai. I wanted to make, or for people in Dubai to watch. I wanted to make a film that people around the world could get a glimpse of Dubai while watching. And for me, it's a totally different brief, you know? So I think that I started small. I thought no one's gonna, you know, let me make a Hollywood, you know, level feature here. So what if I start with like a smaller film, and if I'm doing billboard repairman, most people in Dubai are South Asian, like the 60% or more of the population in the UAE is South Asian. So you have like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. And so I thought, let me make a film in Hindi. Even though I'm Indian, I was born in India, but I'm a Canadian citizen. I can speak 6 words of Hindi, you know, with a gun to my head. And I don't speak any other languages other than English. But if my character spoke English in the film, if he was Indian and he spoke perfect English, it wouldn't make sense. Demographically, it doesn't fit. So I thought, okay, let me write the film in English and make it in Hindi. And so we went to a prominent Indian actor, really, really famous, lovely guy, very down to earth. Met him, and we're good to go. And I can't get into this too much, but things didn't work out. And the day that things didn't work out, I was like, it was one of those moments where I was talking about perseverance earlier, where I think somebody else would have bailed and said, you know what, forget it. Not this project, not right now. And I was talking to Umran on the phone, and I was like, you know what? Why are we thinking like I'm not. Look, I don't know anything about Indian cinema. I don't feel Indian in that I never lived there. I feel like an outsider there. Mind you, I feel like an outsider everywhere I go, and there's reasons for that because I moved around a lot growing up, and I like that because it gives you an observer status, you know, rather than you're not partial really in many ways. So I spoke to Imran, and I was like, you know, I was fed up, and I was like, you know what? Why are we thinking like we don't want to go make films for India? Like, that's not my goal, because that's not what I relate to, and that's not what I understand. I want to make the kind of films that I saw growing up, right? And I was like, our whole goal for the first movie was to write and shoot a small film that made sense and for the demographic, like, you know, an Indian billboard repairman that could kind of prove that we could make a movie, to then go and make a movie like Beneath the Sea of Lights with that kind of budget and those kind of actors. And I was on the phone with Umran the day, the minute that we got a no from whoever had to say no to us. And I was like, you know what? I'm fed up. Like, if we're putting in this much effort, like, why are we making a smaller movie to then go and make the movie that we want to make? I was like, you know who we need? I was like, you know, okay, fine, India is such a large demographic, but there's so many people in the UAE from different parts of Africa. And I was like, if I could pick any actor who is of African origin to play a billboard repairman in Dubai, it would be Barkhad Abdi from Captain Phillips. And Umran's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, man. And then he's like, yeah, but how are we going to get him? I'm like, you know what? Screw, I'm going to get him. I'm going to find out. I'm gonna figure out on IMDb. I'm just gonna find his email address or his agent's email address. I'm just gonna write them.
Wow.
10 minutes later, I wrote to the agent and I sent it out. I'm like, they're never gonna reply to me. So I basically, whenever I write to an actor, I write to their agent, because that's how you got to go, and I write a page or two letter that I sign by hand, that's written to that actor that says, this is what the story's about and this is why I want you for it. And this is something no one told me that. I did it instinctively, and I think I'll always do it now, because it's not, here's the script and here's the log line, can you please read this and tell me if you're interested. It's like, I really want you for this. And there's a reason why I haven't approached anybody else. So I wrote that letter to Barkhad, and like a week later, I was on the phone with him. And 2 weeks later, I was in Boston at the Boston Film Festival, and we had lunch with him, and he was promoting his film Pirates of Somalia. And we're sitting across from an Oscar nominee, Umran and I. And 2 weeks ago, a couple of people said no to us, and now we're sitting across from an Oscar nominee, and he's like, I love the film. We go back to Dubai with that, and we go to some of the same people that said no, and suddenly the no turned into a yes. Because they're like, you got who? So you're shifting from like a Hindi film to an English language film that's geared at the US market with an Oscar nominee in the lead, and your budget is less. I was like, yeah, because the Indian actor that we spoke to wanted to charge like a ridiculous amount of money. For an Indian production, a Dubai film is like, oh, cool, this is a huge budget. India, I mean, there's incredibly efficient film industry, and they make films for some tiny budgets that you can't make for those budgets in the UAE or in the US. And so ironically, I thought incorrectly that we need to make a film that's appeals to India and is in Hindi, because the budget will be smaller and I can raise that budget. But it ended, I mean, for a lot of reasons, Beneath the Sea of Lights came in cheaper when it's also the co-production company that we worked with. The minute you have someone like Barkhad on board, a lot of people will say, what do you need? Because they've seen his films, especially Captain Phillips. They know him. And they're like, and everyone's curious. They're like, Barkhad Abdi is going to play a Somali billboard repairman in our city. Hey, that's cool. It's something that everyone can relate to. Whereas when you have a famous, I mean, the Indian actor that we'd spoken to was very prominent, but he was a prominent Indian actor. Not everyone knows them, whereas like everyone's seen Captain Phillips, and even if they haven't, I mean, they've seen Barkhad from other places. So it became a lot easier to secure funding. It became a lot easier, not just funding. I mean, we had production partners like the hotel, one of the hotels we shot at. They put up Barkhad for nothing. In a great room, they put up Jim for nothing, because these are really, really good, well-known actors. And there was a sense of pride of like, hey, like they're making a movie in our city. That's awesome.
Crazy. Yeah.
So it worked out. And again, it's that perseverance. Your words, not take no for an answer. That's literally how Umran and I work. It was like the day, I don't know. I mean, I don't drink, but I would imagine that like if I did, my instinct would have been like, I'm going to go drown my sorrows because, oh no, my movie's falling apart. And instead we don't have time to kind of grieve, when things go wrong.
Yeah,
I like that. I don't have time to sulk. Because the minute something goes wrong, there's nobody else to fix it. It's always down to me and him at the end of the day. And so if you're that busy, then you don't have time to get depressed. Your depression can't catch up with you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, the minute Barkhad came on board, things became a lot easier. And the whole film shifted. Like it became a Hollywood film, which is what I always wanted to make. But I thought like making a smaller independent Indian film or a film for the Indian market would be a stepping stone to making a movie like Beneath. And I got to leapfrog that,
Yeah.
Luckily.
So Jim and Barkhad are obviously like established big actors. Did that change your filmmaking approach at all in the way that you direct?
Honestly, no.
Did you feel any pressure at all?
I did. I did. Yeah, I did. I mean, I felt pressure at lunch. I felt pressure.
Yeah, I bet.
Like sipping a glass of water in front of this guy. And I don't know. I think he's the first famous Hollywood actor that I've ever met. So, I didn't grow up in a place where you can, that's like George Clooney having lunch over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, whoa. So yeah, but I think Barkhad is so down to earth, and he just made it so easy. Like he's just him. You know, there are no airs about him or anything, and he made it really easy. And Jim as well. I think Jim is mischievous.
He seems like a really chill, like very laid back person.
He's very chill. He's very laid back. He's very intelligent, but he's mischievous as a person, and I'm mischievous as a person. Like I'm a total prankster. I mess with my crew all the time. Like there's not a single request or instruction or whatever that goes out without some sort of joke attached to it. You know, I'm sure it pisses people off, but you know, they have to put up with it, I guess. But I think they were both so easy to get along with because Barkhad's down to earth, Jim's also down to earth, but I could connect with both of them on different levels. And I think my directing style is working with actors is very like, I'm going to explain the scene to you from my perspective. Mm-hmm. And pulling back from that, I'm going to explain the story to you from my perspective, like in our first chats. And then I'm going to tell you what I think of your character, right? And then when you come to Dubai and you shoot this film with me, you've lived with this character now for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it is. And if I've done my job right in explaining why your character is even there, your job is to then interpret that into a living, breathing character, right? I don't care about the lines. They can change whatever lines they want. I never cared about the lines. But if I've done my job right, then instinctively, when you come to Dubai, you'll know how to play a certain scene. You may have questions for me. Should I do this? Should I do that? But if I've done my job right in telling you why we're doing what we're doing, you know, big picture. Yeah. I'm more of a big picture person. I'm not a details person. And that sucks when you're looking for typos in your screenplay, but it's great when you're talking to actors because you give them a lot of freedom. Yeah. And I've been told by a few actors I've worked with that I do that. I give them a lot of freedom, and I like that. You know, I really feel like my job is just to facilitate. You know, can't use bad language. Not my words. David Fincher is attributed, or said to have said, "Hire the right people and get the F out of the way." And I really subscribe to that. That Jim was absolutely the right guy to play the character he played, and I cannot imagine another actor playing Barkhad's character to date. I mean, I've been sitting with this film for years now, and these were absolutely the right people for it, and I knew that from like the first scenes they played. So the fact that they were big names. They made it easy for me to forget that, when, let's put it like that. I think it says more about them than me. I wasn't bullshitting anybody. Everybody knows it was my first film. Yeah. I don't think anybody took advantage of that. And I think that they just made it easy for me to just talk to them like regular people,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And it's everything is a conversation. I think, I remember Jim, like on the day of the shoot, really, really tense day logistically. And he's like, I want to pull this speech. I don't like this speech. I'm like, okay. It's like this much writing. I'm like, okay, what do you want to do? He's like, well, I think my character would just laugh and say, run. I was like, okay. So we shoot it. And he's like, cool, now let me do the speech. Because he's a gentleman like that. He's like, okay, I thank you for listening to me and doing it my way. Now let's do what's on the page. Or the other way around. Hey, I've done what's on the page. Now can we do one take for me? And he'll always ask me, can I do one for me? Can I do one for me? So he's like, okay, cool, thanks. I've done the one for me. And now let's do the paragraph. And I'm like, no, we're not shooting the paragraph. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to say yes to you if I don't agree with what you've said. If I don't agree that your character would just laugh and say run and he wouldn't give a long speech there, then I'm not going to do it just to make you feel better. But if I buy into what you're saying, then there's no need for me to shoot the paragraph anymore. So we're wrapped. Let's move. And he's like, huh. And I was like, huh, because commercial directing is all about, oh, let's do one more take for safety, and then nine more takes for safety later, oh, but can we try it with a pink pillow instead of a blue pillow, And here I am, and it's the most important thing I've done in my life so far to me. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't need a safety. I got the shot I wanted, and he played it right. He nailed it. That one line. I mean, it's a great scene, and he was right. So I think when you look at the big picture and you're not so hung up on, oh, he didn't say the line that way and he didn't do this that way, then you can allow for that. I think the film's better because that little paragraph wasn't in it.
Yeah, the collaboration definitely stirs creativity.
Yeah.
Like, especially when it comes to directing actors. I like that you give that much freedom to the actors that you work with. That really allows them to do their thing.
Yeah, you've got to be confident with your material. And I think it's easier because I wrote the screenplay, because I always know the intention of the writer. And I was, again, going to my folks, I was talking to them about this the other day, and they're like, would you direct somebody else's script? And I said, I would hate to do that. And, they asked me why. And I said, it's a very simple reason. When it comes to writing, I think writers are the most intelligent people, like successful writers are the most intelligent people. It's like, I think Robert McKee was saying, right, a writer's job is to understand the world and then explain it, right?
Yeah.
How the heck? But that's what they do. And I think they're the most successful writers, the most intelligent people. I am not one of them. And I think that if I were given a screenplay and someone told me, shoot this, like an Aaron Sorkin script, okay? Someone gave me an Aaron Sorkin screenplay and said, shoot this. I would miss so much. There's so much that would go over my head, right? Yeah. And if you had to pick a director for that film, you wouldn't want a director who doesn't understand the material.
Exactly.
So my screenplays may be flawed, but at least I know that I'm smart enough to understand at the level of the writer, because I am the writer, right?
Exactly.
And you can switch smart enough and dumb enough. Because as stupid as the writer is, the director is, right? And as intelligent as the writer is, the director is. You don't want, look, I don't want to name names, this is horrible, but you could probably think of a few directors that aren't known for cerebral screenplays. And if you give them a very intricate drama, they're going to mess it up, right? So, I think at least I know I can direct or at least I know if I direct the films that I write, the director and the writer are kind of working at the same level. Whether that's a low level or high level, that's anybody's guess. But, so because I wrote the script, there's a confidence in that I've understood to the best of my capacity, the material. Yeah. Now, the same scene, if I hadn't written the script and Jim was like, hey, pull this paragraph and just do the run, right? I would have to go to the writer and say, hey, man, am I reading this for what it is? Like, how much more is there to this paragraph? Like, what else is he saying, between the lines? What's the subtext? Have I got all of it? Because subtext scares the heck out of me. I don't grasp it all the time, And I think it was easier for me to write because I knew that, okay, I know exactly the intention behind that paragraph. And now that Jim's articulated it in the way that he has, I know it can go.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think you have to have a confidence in the material to be able to let go of your words, and you have to always look at the story. Like if I pull this scene out, or if I pull this line out, or if we don't have time to shoot the last segment of this scene, how does that affect the story overall? And so when you start pulling pieces out of the puzzle and then seeing, okay, the film still works with it, I think that gives you the confidence to just give in to your actors if they have a reason for saying, hey, I want to pull this, or I want to change this, or I want to add that, And I think that's where it came from, really. It wasn't just that I like to give my actors freedom. It was that I had a certain level of confidence that I've understood the script. And yeah, I am qualified to give my actors that freedom, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And also just the trust that you have with the actors.
Yeah.
Interpret the material the way that you have. Yeah.
Yeah, and they earned it.
So you started filming Beneath in 2018 in Dubai.
Yeah.
And you grew up a portion of your life in Dubai, right?
Yeah.
How did you approach doing the city justice and like capturing the spirit of Dubai with the movie?
It's a really good question. if I can be really honest, I put the camera down. I didn't construct it. My character travels a landscape, a visual landscape, from a rundown apartment that was actually being demolished, or was set for demolition when we were shooting. That one of my really close friends grew up in the building next door to that in 1998. So in 1998, this was a really fancy part of town, and in 2018, it was being demolished. And to me, that said so much about the film. So my actor goes from sharing a 6-person bunk bed, 6-person room, like a 1-bedroom apartment in that building, to driving a Rolls Royce down a 12-lane arterial superhighway, past a 5-star hotel, going to Dubai Mall and the Fountain. Because it did that, I think because that was the landscape, I didn't have to think much about how am I going to show Dubai. I just had to shoot, because I shot the apartment scene for what it was. We didn't go out of our way to make it more rundown than it was. We didn't go out of our way to make it nicer than it was. We didn't go out of the city didn't need makeup. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Either to either look better or worse, meaning to either look more wealthier in the wealthier parts of town, or to look less wealthy in the less wealthy parts of town. And I like that we just shot what was there. I worried more about the actors inhabiting the space. I never felt that the spaces were inauthentic, because I think maybe it's because I spent more than 25 years there. They felt real to me, and I watch those scenes now, and the scenes are authentic. The places, except for a couple of surreal elements in the film, which are intentionally surreal, it's completely feasible. Like there's a cold open in the movie, the first couple of minutes, where he gets stopped at the airport by customs officers, immigration officers that aren't speaking to him in English, and they speak to him in Arabic. And I've been in that situation, and he freezes. He can't understand them. He freezes, and they suspect him of doing something, and we don't know what that is yet. But I've been in that situation, and I watched the movie finally. I think after the Showtime thing was confirmed, for the first time I watched it as a movie. That this is going to go out as a film now. I'm not looking at the editing and mistakes and legal stuff and whatever. And the first 2 minutes of the movie, I was like, whoa, that's happened to me before. I've been stopped at the airport by a guy that doesn't speak English, or maybe he does, and he's intentionally putting me in a spot, because that's his job, right? Mm-hmm. The immigration officer's job to make sure you haven't done anything shady. And the minute they know you haven't done anything shady, then they're really nice. And that's exactly what happens to him in the film. So everything felt authentic to me. I didn't have to think about Dubai. I don't know if that's the answer, that is interesting, but really we just some actors, you just put the camera down and let them do their thing. And the city was like that. I didn't have to show it a certain way. And we didn't think about do we make it dark here? Do we make it light there? I know, in terms of colors, Dubai Mall, we want it to be the warmest part of the movie. So lots of yellows and golds. And it's like that. So we didn't have to do too much. And, the apartment, we wanted it to be in stark contrast to that. And I think the tendency is to go blue and cold. We didn't really want to do that. We went green. And, we had, all we did in the apartment was we put a green little filter on the window. And just stained glass. And one of the windows actually already was green. That's where we got the idea from. And so that kind of gives that apartment a green cast. And that's pretty much all the set. All the dressing that we did for Dubai. Everything else is really, it's the way you see it. I don't feel like it's a color grade that works very hard, because it doesn't have that much work to do. Also, the other thing is, Imran shoots in a very natural style, which I love. And so he kind of puts lights in places where you would already expect to see a light if you were standing there in front of the actor. And so I think that it feels really natural. And that was the main aim, just show Dubai the way it is. Don't think about it too much. And the other thing is, from what I said maybe 3 hours ago, we didn't have time to think about it either. So it worked out. I didn't have time to be too mindful of how are we going to show this part of Dubai? How are we going to show that part of Dubai? sometimes we just got there and we're like, guys, we're already 30 minutes late. We haven't started rolling. So let's shoot. And we shot. And Dubai is such an interesting city, and it's such a varied city that all of these landscapes, they look so set up. And a lot of them were by our production designer, Pranali, who's amazing. But a lot of them were just as is, and we sat there, put our actors in, and shot. So
that's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah. So once you're done wrapping, when it comes to production, you talked a lot about shooting already. So this film is going through post. It's being colored. It's doing whatever, right? So once it's done and once it's in lock, how do you approach distribution as an independent filmmaker?
Interesting. That's what I knew the least about. And I didn't know much about anything else, so that should tell you something. But distribution was the big, what do we do there?
Yeah.
And we kind of treated it like a, build it and they will come kind of thing. Our agency, Shoreline, they're our sales agents. So Shoreline Entertainment, they got in touch with us, I think last year. And they said, hey, we saw the poster and the poster on IMDB, and the setup looks quite cool. Can we have a chat about the movie? And they really liked it. So they got in touch with us, and then they had a plan for distribution. And, I don't know how much I can say. Things got derailed, obviously, because of COVID. So unfortunately, we couldn't go the film festival route because, at this point in time, it doesn't make sense. We needed to get to release because everything got slowed down. And, we didn't want to wait on a film for longer than we had to.
Exactly.
So, yeah, with the distribution, really, it was more their job luckily, they reached out to us. But once they did, they had the plans. And then we just kind of left it with them and said, okay, what do you need from us? The Showtime deal, obviously, came from them. So they know what they're doing.
Yeah. So, I was just going to ask about, what was the one thing that you learned a lot about that you didn't really know about it before? And I guess, distribution really fills that.
Yeah, distribution. And I think, honestly, the biggest lesson is writing. If I go back and I watch the film for whatever reason, like bits and pieces, I'm working on a scene, I'm checking something to make sure that it's legally recovered. I watched the movie and I don't take issue with camera angles. I'm not the kind of person that's like, oh, I wish I had shot that differently or I'd done this differently. When something's done, it's done. But the important things that I learned along the way in the last 4 years, since the first drafts of Beneath was November 2016, so really 4 years, is writing. Your story, it lives and dies with the writing. And if you don't understand that early on, then you're going to be painfully reminded of that throughout the process of making your movie. And editing, a lot of editing the movie was fixing the writing mistakes, or tightening the writing. Even if it wasn't a mistake, I felt like, oh man, we could have easily done this. Can we do that in the edit? Or we could have lost that scene. I would have done this differently. How can we kind of try to achieve that with the footage that we have? So the biggest lesson would have been that writing, is the absolute most important thing. And again, it's not about the words. I've got a lot of tattoos, and one I got is down here. I don't know if you can see it. It's in Latin. It's a phrase that says rem. I'm going to say this wrong, but rem tene verba sequentur. It means grasp the meaning, and the words will follow. So if you understand what you're trying to say and what you're talking about, then everything else just flows from that. And the reverse is also true, that if you've written without understanding and you shot without understanding, or you're trying to edit without understanding, then you're not gonna have a good time.
Yeah, no, exactly.
The best craftsmen and craftswomen in the industry, whatever their job, my music composer would compose based on character. He would talk to me about character. My editor would edit based on character. I would edit based on character. My cinematographer would shoot based on character. my sound um, uh, mix team would do the sound mix and make mix decisions based on character, right? And these are people that are far removed from the writing process that happened, 4 years earlier. But that's how important this stuff is. It's always about the story. That's the most important thing that I learned. So what that effectively did is it like kneecapped me for writing the second screenplay. Because now every word I write, I'm like, what are the consequences of this statement or this sentence 4 years down the road? You know what I mean? But hopefully I'll get over that. It's like the opposite of writer's block. It's like this paralyzing fear of, oh my God, now that I understand how important writing is, what do I write now?
I'll keep that in mind, because that actually sounds terrifying. Thinking about like how when you're writing, sometimes things just like not even fly over your head. You're just like, oh, we'll fix it in whatever. But then you can't fix it in whatever. Especially with a large scale project like the one that you're working on with.
Yeah. Right. You can fix a lot of mistakes in post, and you can fix a lot of writing in post. They say film's written 3 times, right? When you write the script, you shoot the script, and when you edit. So you can fix a lot in post. The film that I edited was not the film that I wrote. Thank God. I'm not talking about the first draft. I'm talking about like the final shooting draft. Like that, So it's important. If I can push somebody here, the one thing that, because I say so much about writing that makes it scary, and it is scary. But there was one really short book that demystified this whole process for me. And it was called The Nutshell Technique by Jill Chamberlain. And so she has this theory that I subscribe to. I'm going to really mess this up. If she hears this, she'll kill me. But if your character doesn't change, right, or fail to change, if they don't have a flaw that either they overcome if your film is a comedy, or they fail to overcome if your film is a tragedy, then you don't really have a story. You've got a scenario, you've got a setup, right? And in this nutshell technique, she has these, it's literally, it's a chart, and it's got these 8 blanks that you have to fill in. And if you have those 8 blanks in place, you'll have a cohesive story. And it's that simple. It's these interconnected elements that demystify the whole process. Now, she doesn't tell you how to write, and I don't think any real writer would ever tell somebody how to write, because that's so subjective. But this is like a compass. Like, you kind of create a roadmap for yourself. And I've read a lot of books, and there's a lot of stuff to subscribe to. But like, if I could recommend one to people, it would be this one, because it just demystifies the whole process. And when I applied this to the new movie that I'm working on, suddenly I knew how to make sense of it, and my writer's block went away, because I understood the meaning of what I was saying. I understood my character's flaw, and I understood that I want them to overcome it, and I understood that you only overcome your flaws, your real character flaws, in a moment of crisis. So you need a moment of crisis. A lot of the stuff is things you already know, like the point of no return, the crisis point of the film, but why they're interconnected, she explains really well. So I think it's super scary. Writing is terrifying, but if you have a solid compass like that, then I think you're okay. Because no one can find your movie for you, but someone can kind of tell you. I really wish I read this book before I had written the first draft of Beneath, because I would have saved a lot of those 19 drafts. But I think that it made the process a lot easier, and that's also something to keep in mind, like, throughout the movie when you're shooting it as a director. Like the basic stuff that, directors that don't want to write, they need to understand the basics of writing, to be able to direct the scenes. And I've been in so many situations where actors know more about writing than directors do, because they're so used to theatrical and structured pieces, for example.
Exactly.
And the directors, they're not a writer, and they don't want to be a writer. That's fine, but there's some fundamentals you gotta understand, I think, to direct narrative well or effectively. So yeah, I felt bad because I'm saying the whole time that writing, oh my God, it's so scary. but at the same time, like there are things that can help demystify that process for you, and this was definitely one of them for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely look up that book. I just wrote it.
Oh yeah, it's a
my
quick.
notes. Yeah.
And
Well,
she explains it really well, much better than I do.
I can't wait to dig into that, and I also can't wait to watch the movie when I finally have time and when it finally goes on streaming on Showtime.
Sure, I can send you a private screener if you like.
Ooh, that'd be very. No, I would love that actually.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for everything. This has been a great conversation.
Sorry for the long chat. Yeah,
This was really good and really helpful for me as a filmmaker, and probably the people who are listening to this who have the intention of making films as well. You really go into detail, and it's clear that you're talented, driven, and passionate about what you do as to regards with films. So, like, what can the audience check out now, and what's next, basically? Just really quick.
What's next? So the film I'm working on is called Epitaph, and Imran and I are writing it right now. It is set in ancient Egypt and before the pyramids. So the setup is an ancient Egyptian stonemason tries to smuggle his father's body into a tomb fit for a king.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a heist movie in ancient Egypt. And what's at the heart of the movie is it's about guilt. You know, it's about guilt that we carry. Every single one of us, we've got some form of guilt or another, and we often sometimes don't even know that we're carrying it, but we don't know how to put it down. And this is the story of a character driven by guilt who just really doesn't know how to put it down. And that's really the heart of it's a heist film in ancient Egypt, but that's what it's all about.
Awesome. So people who listen to this podcast could follow you on
Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
In your socials?
All right, my handle. It's Neel was here, so Neel.was.here.
Perfect. Well, that's a wrap on the PRiSM Podcast. I'm your host, Rodrigo Mariano. Thank you very much, Neel. This has been a very enlightening conversation.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, you can follow my socials at @DragonsFoe and @PRiSM Media Official. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.